everyone to a very special event. This is going to be a live stream with me. My name is Andreas, and I am a founder of Toddle. And with me today, I have Toby.
Hello.
And do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Toby. I'm the CEO, founder of Bravo Studio.
Excellent. So today we are going to collaborate on building an application that allows you to basically choose your no-code stack. So whenever you're building an app with all these fantastic new no-code tools, you need to figure out which tool to combine into your stack. So what are the services you need to use to build whatever it is you dream of building? And so that's sort of the point of the app we're going to build today. It's going to be a little bit of a for fun project. So we're going to do a Tinder style app where you can swipe right and swipe left on different services to essentially choose your stack, and then you can go and share it with the world. So what we're going to do today is we're going to combine three tools. We're going to use a Contentful, which is a content management system, where we store a lot of data about the different tools that we want to include in this project. Then we're going to use Toddle to build a web front end that lets us load all these tools up, swipe left and right, and choose which ones you want to include in your stack, which one you want to throw out. And then finally, you can go and tweet what your choice is. Once we've done that, we're going to hand over to Toby, and he's going to show us how you can take our Toddle web app and actually embed it right into a Bravo app that you can then actually publish to Google Play Store or iOS App Store. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think without any further ado, let's get started. Do you have anything you want to add before we go, Toby?
No, I think this is the only well, let's get into it. Let's get into it, and then we can talk about the different things later on. So yeah, let's go.
Yes. If you have any questions, feel free to go and ask them right there on YouTube. We have some moderators that's going to pick them out and pass them on to us. We'll do a question time, I think, at the end. Or should we do one in between each step? Let's do one at the end, I think.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do questions at the end. So if you had everything, you can start typing them in now. That's fine. Our moderators will pick them up and pass them on to us by the end. Okay. So I'm just going to go and share my screen here. So I've got a Contentful loaded up here. And what we've done here is we've built these entries where we have different tools. So we've got SAP here, for example. And we just have a name, description, a screenshot, a logo, and of course a Twitter handle. So if you're not familiar with Contentful, it's a very flexible CMS system that lets you basically decide exactly what kind of data you want to store there. So it's like almost a database. It's very, very flexible. It's got a lot of features that sort of go slightly beyond what you normally see in a CMS. So it's kind of perfect for the thing we're building today, because it's very much what we call a high read problem, where we'll add some tools every now and then, but a lot of people are going to read them. And this is where tools like Contentful are really, really ideal. So in order to access all this data here, to actually get out our list of tools, we need to use their API. And you can go inside Contentful, see their content delivery API, and you can read about how to access all that content. We're not going to go in depth for that today. So I've already picked out here a URL that basically allows me to list all the different items that are inside my collection of no-code tools. And so the next step now is we're going to go into Toddle right here. And now we want to build up our application. And the first thing you probably noticed is that quite a lot of the UI is already built. So this is going to be a long live stream, but we're not quite want to go and build every part of the application. That'll probably get a little bit boring to watch. So we've pre-built quite a lot of it already. The basic premise here is we've got these cards in the middle. Each card's going to have an image. That's our screenshot from Contentful. Then we're going to say the name of the tool and a short description. And then you're going to be able to swipe left and swipe right on this card. And of course, if you swipe right, you mean that's thumbs up, you like this. Otherwise, you swipe down, and it means you're not happy with it, right? So the first thing we need to do now that we've built the basic sort of UI is we want to start fetching this data from Contentful. So we need some data from our CMS system so we have something to work with in toddle. And the next step after that is this going to take all that data and start connecting our UI to the data. So we're seeing the real data from Contentful. So I'm going to go and copy our URL here for the data. And in toddle, I can add an API. And I'm going to call it tools. And I can just paste my URL here into the URL field, and toddle is going to pass that into the different parts. And it's automatically going to fetch the data once I do that. So toddle automatically knows that here's a tool. We set it to what's called auto fetch. So as soon as the page loads, it's going to fetch that data and bring it into the application. And we can see the same. It sort of passed all the JSON data here, so you can see all the different structures. It doesn't matter too much here what the different parts is. This is sort of Contentful's data model. If you got to work with it, you've got to dive into understanding that. But for now, we just need to see that it actually fetched all the right data. So let's see, we've got some name, description, screenshots. It looks pretty right. Right, so now that we've got our tools, the next bit we want to do is we want to use them to actually power these swipe cards. I've already created a component in toddle called swipe card, or swipey card actually. This is a component that you can go and copy into your own projects if you want to use that. And it basically handles all the swipe interaction. So that sort of saves me a little bit of time by reusing that. The first thing I want to do is I want to repeat these cards. So for every item, for every tool in our that comes back from the API, I want to show one of these cards. I can do that by right-clicking this, then saying repeat. This brings up our formula editor. In the formula editor, you basically have to provide it for repeat. You have to provide it with an array of items, and then it'll duplicate that element for every item in the array. So here I can go and say, I want to pick my API, tools, and then data, and then right here. So now we're inside data. This means now we're browsing all the data coming back from Contentful. And I know that inside items, that's where my array is. So we're going to say, okay. And initially we can see that not a lot actually happened, though we can kind of start seeing there's a little bit of a stack going on here behind. The reason why it looks the same is because we've only set to repeat. We still have to wire all the different parts of our UI up to the data we got back from Contentful. So the first thing I think we'll do is just to pick out the name. So I'm going to select the text here. And right here, I have a little FX button. And again, that opens up our formula editor. So the formula editor is going to be featured quite a lot today. It's kind of the glue that binds everything together in toddle. So when you have some data you need it inside your UI, you're going to use a formula. If you have an event and you need to update something, you're probably using a formula. It kind of comes up all the time. So as you get used to it, it becomes very nice to work with. So right now, because we did our repeat on this item, we now have a new data that's available inside our formula editor. And this is called a repeat item. And what this basically means is for every card, it's going to be different data based on what item it was in that array we repeated over. So now I'm browsing again. This is data from Contentful, right? So we're browsing our fields, and then it was called name. So now you'll notice a little bit of an interesting here is that says Bravo Studio, even though our API said Zapier. And the reason for that is actually that the first item in this stack is the furthest away one. So at the very back of the stack, you'll see Zapier. At the very front, we'll see Bravo Studio. That's why there's a slight discrepancy, right? They're all stacked on top of each other. So when we swipe, we'll sort of discover them one at a time. We can do the same thing here with the description. We choose the formula editor, and then from our repeat item again, this time we're going to say description. And so the final thing we want to do is change this header image. So now we've got the actual title and description. The final thing we're going to do is change the header image. So we're going to select the image. And then inside here, I need the source attribute. So if you're familiar with HTML, Toddle is very closely based on HTML. So if you're familiar with HTML, this probably looks very normal. If you're not, it doesn't seem to make too much sense. But essentially, this img means an image element. src here means the source. So what is the URL this image should be fetched from? And we're getting that back from the API as well. Unfortunately, while we are getting the screenshot, the first screenshot back, we're not getting a URL. We're just getting this ID. Because the way Contentful works is that it actually sends those asses along in a different part of its payload. So I cheated a little bit to make this. I created this slightly help formula, where we are, called an asset URL that basically goes and grab all our data from let's just maximize that. What that does is basically you give it an ID for this asset you want to show, and it finds that out from the data. It picks out the URL and then actually shows the source, right? So we can use that inside here. I'll go image and then source, and I'm going to say, let's just say we've got asset URL, and the asset ID should be the item fields screenshot. And the first screenshot and its ID. There we are. So now we've got our card here. We've got our title, our description. We've got our header card loaded up. Let's go and test how this works. So we can press here in test mode. So now we've got a complete view, and now I can actually interact with my application. So I can now start dragging this to the side. We can drag it right for thumbs up or left for thumbs down. I'm obviously going to drag it right. But what we also notice is that every time we drag it, it kind of comes back. So the next step in this process is that when we swipe it, either right or left, we want to add it to some list we've created that are either our approved tools or our rejected tools. So if we swipe right, we want to add this tool to our approved tools. So I can go onto my swipe card component or swipey card component, and it actually has a built-in event that says, when you swipe right, when a swipe right has been done, you can trigger an event and then decide what's going to happen. So we've already seen formulas, which is sort of the first big visual programming tool in Toddle. The second one is our workflow editor, and it's much simpler than the formula editor. So all we're doing here is saying what should happen when you swipe right, and then we get a list of operations we can add. So I want to go and I want to set the variable approved. I created that beforehand. So right now it's just an empty array. I'm gonna, there we are. When I swipe, here we are. When I swipe right, I want to update my variable approved. And I want to actually start with the variable itself. So that's the empty list. And to that, I'm going to append this repeat item. So I'm just taking that whole item that represents this card, and I'm putting it inside this list called approved. So now if we swipe right, well, it looks like nothing happened still popping back. But if we look inside our approved, we can see we now have data in here. So the last thing we want to do is make sure to not actually in this list here show items that are has already been approved. So I'm gonna go and say this repeat. I now want to remove here by saying filter. So filter basically says take an array, drop some of these items. Or actually specifically keep some of these items. So I'm going to say if your item is not, actually we're going to say if approved includes your includes item, and then not. So basically, if approved, if the item's inside approved, that this is true, and we want to make it not true, because then it doesn't get included in the filter. So let's try that. Now we actually, right away, we can see it works, right? The first card went away. And if I go and swipe make now, it stays out, because now we have 2 items in approved. I can go and do that same thing, because we also have swipe left. So I can go and say swipe left. I'm going to set rejected to rejected, append, and then my repeat item. And at the same time, I'm going to say, let's just maximize this, or rejected includes item. So if none of them, if neither this includes item or that, then you should show it, right? So now we should get this working. If you swipe left on WeWeb, we are still seeing that going over to the rejected. We can swipe right here on Sano, left, and we keep adding these to our different lists. I'm going to swipe right on toddle, and we're just going to swipe left and right here. So when we get to the end of it, now we've had these 2 lists of rejected and approved that has all these items. So we kind of want to show them here at the end of it, right? So I'm going to go, and I actually already have some lists inside here, but right now it's just a small list that says approved here. Doesn't really contain anything. So just like we did with our API data, where we repeated over that data inside this card, we can do exactly the same thing in this list, but it's going to be a little bit simpler this time, because all we need to do is basically go over our approved list. So we already have that. And now I think instead of adding these sort of text things in here, I think we're going to add an image element instead. And we're going to set the source of this. We're going to use our asset URL function again. But this time we're going to get the logo and then the ID for that. Right. And then we'll just remove this item, right? So now here we get all our list of approved logos that we've included in our list, right? And we can go and do that exact same thing for the rejected. So we're going to repeat it. This time we pick our rejected list. And we take this out. And actually this time we can just alt drag this one down, because it's going to work with all the same. It's the same basic functionality. So we can just duplicate it over, right? So now by the end of it, we have this nice view here where you can see everything you chose inside your stack. You can see what you rejected. This, of course, if you don't like this, we can just refresh and it'll reset back and you get to try again. And I think the, let's just wait for the loading data. Here we are. We'll just do, we'll swipe some right. Here we go. Oh, there we go. Swipe some left. Go back and forth. All right. Now, the last thing I want to add here is that, let's just scroll down, is that I want to be able to tweet my final response here, right? So once you pick your stack, you should be able to then press a button and it'll like generate a tweet for you. That'll basically show everything. That'll basically show what you chose in your stack, so you can share it with the world, right? So I'm going to go inside my my container here. Let's just collapse some of these. And I'm going to add a new element. And I've already cheated a little bit here and added a tweet button. Oh. let's just do that again. There's a slight issue. Tweet button. Let's just try getting a
third time lucky.
Yeah. We'll go here, add again a tweet button. Right. And this tweet button basically just asks for a stack, and then it handles all the other bit inside it. So I can just say here, I just want my approved stack. So now we're kind of ready. So we get to, we've done the swiping, we've done the data fetching, we've shown the list, and finally we got a tweet button. So let's go and try this in preview mode. So you can press the little preview button in the bottom bar, and it loads a whole new page, which is like your full application not running inside of the toddle editor, right? We can also I have already done some responsive design, so it should work all the way down to mobile. We can swipe, right? And then we get our final results. Bravo, WeWeb, Sano, build ship. I ended up rejecting toddle. Probably not going to end up tweeting that, but let's try and see if it works anyway. So now I'm going to load up here, and this says my no-code stack is Bravo Studio, and get all the live Twitter handles, and here's a link where you can go and try and build them yourself. So that's sort of the basics of how you do that in toddle. Obviously, we went pretty fast, so if you did not catch all of that, that's okay. We've got a lot of great resources on how you get started with toddle. The important thing is you understand there are these tools inside of toddle you can use for all these, like wiring up your APIs, doing interactive applications, and as even a tweet button here, right? I think we're not tweeting this version of the tweet. So maybe let's actually do one more thing. Let's go and say publish on this. So now that I've built, I'm always working in my own development version here. So now I'm going to say publish. I'm going to say we are live. And then I can publish the version I was working on. So it's now goes live to our main version. Right. And so now if I go to nocode_stack.toddle.site, we'll see my actual live version here running. And you can try that URL as well if you feel like it. So that kind of concludes how we do the toddle part. I'm thinking maybe actually it might make sense to take some questions now if there's specific questions about toddle and what I just did. That might be better than trying to keep it to the end. So should we open up for some questions from the audience now?
Let's go there. I see a couple of questions that come in. Carla was our first question. Carla, I saw from Carla was why using a CMS instead of a database directly?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the only good answer in this case is really that we already had Contentful set up with a lot of this. So it was just an easy way to get started. I think for this particular app, as long as the scope is exactly what we have here, a CMS kind of makes sense. So since it is kind of one-way content, like we edit it and everyone else views it, I think you would logically see the next step of this being able to sign in, maybe having your own account, maybe being able to save your stack and share with other people internally. In that case, a CMS wouldn't be the right choice anymore, and you would go and use a backend instead. And it might also be we do a version of this with one of the backend providers, and then swap that out at some point in the future. I think that could also be an interesting stream to do.
One thing I think that you did mention earlier on, which I think is really relevant and not everyone I think appreciates. What's great about one of the great things of Contentful is because, as you said, it's focused on read. It's great because all the content is automatically put onto a CDN, so it's really it's much faster of a lot of content. So if you've got content heavy, it's really good for that. I mean, I think we push in Bravo, we push Airtable a lot, and which is flexible and you can put data in easily, but it doesn't do that whole CDN and lots of reads thing that Contentful does. And one of the things that most people don't know about Airtable is you've got like a 5 requests per second rate limit, which can really mess people up if you get a lot of people. If you get really busy, people can get really stuck with that. So something like Contentful is super good when you've got a lot of content. But as Andreas says, it's when you start having customization and more other things, it becomes pretty hairy. So it's not for everybody, but it certainly has some great advantages.
Yeah. We use it. We use it internally for our documentation and our blog. So it's built actually not that different from what you just saw. The front end of our documentation and blog is built in Toddle, and it's powered by Contentful. So for that kind of mainly one-way content, like it's still dynamic, as in we're rendering based on the data coming back from the API, but it's very one-way. We're not submitting often, right? Or we're not actually at all editing it through our Toddle application. In those cases, CDN is a really good idea. The second you need something more interactive, you need to upgrade that to a database and a proper no-code backend. Great.
There's a couple more questions from Carl. I don't know if you can see them, Andreas.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer those now?
Well, what should we have yet? How does the reject and approved apply to the user that have interacted with it? So I think that's a good question. Let's just go back to on its creator. We'll call it update. So every time you make an edit in Toddle, you need to create a new branch, which is essentially your own personal version of Toddle that nobody else is going to interfere with. And then by the time you publish, you can merge that with other users' content, right? So in this case, we used variables for handling our approved and rejected list. And a variable in Toddle means it's something that only lives inside the Toddle application. So we're not saving that to a database anywhere. That's why the second I refreshed the browser, they got reset to empty arrays, right? And we went right back to start. So we're not persisting this data anywhere. We're doing a very simple one where as long as you got the application open, you have access to this state, the approved and rejected list. The second we refresh, you start over, right? So in this case, those two lists are only, because they're running in my browser, they're only visible to me, right? They're not shared with anyone else. They're never sent over the internet.
Actually, I've got one question, Andreas. I mean, is it possible, or is there any need to have like snippets of JavaScript that can be pushed into there as well? Does that connect in, or does it have to work through your formulas and things that you've built?
Yes, you absolutely can. So especially for formulas, we actually find that it's not very often you want to extend it. But for actions, like we saw when you clicked and update a variable, that's quite a powerful feature to be able to do. So you can go and on our side panel here, we have this little custom code tab.
Nice.
And I've got a few I've added here. I don't think I actually need them for anything, but I can go and say, actually, we can even do a quick. I think we have one on our documentation under the custom code. So you can say, right, I want to add some. I think we did the whole. I'm hoping we have this. Otherwise, some settings up for disappointment. It's that's unfortunate. Didn't we add the code for that? We did not. Okay, I'm not going to attempt to do that now, but here's a base on our documentation is a simple example where it imports a confetti library and then immediately clicks it. So I think you can see it here on the here. So we actually have a link that showcases how that works on our documentation site, because it's a Toddle app, so it's loading that same action. So yeah, I mean, confetti is for some reason not something we've built into Toddle, though now that I say it out loud, we very clearly should. But again, you can, in just a few lines of code, if you know a little bit of JavaScript, or sometimes if you don't really, but actually knows how to copy paste code in, or ask ChatGPT, it's very easy to add new actions to Toddle. And you can do the same thing with formulas. What we find is that the formula editor is quite complete. there's not really a lot of times when you need to go beyond what Toddle can do. We've actually had a hard time coming up with good examples of what to use it for. Great.
Very cool. Nice.
Right. And we've got one more question here. Could you also use other databases? This is kind of a follow-up, I think. Could you also use other databases like Xano, Supabase, or maybe even just a JSON file served directly from a SQL database? Yes, you absolutely could. Toddle works really well with all of the above mentioned, including just putting in a JSON file. We don't, at this point, let you connect directly to an SQL database. And the reason for that is just that there has to be an authentication step. So if you connect directly from a browser to a SQL database, you basically have full access.
Yeah. You get shot. You should get shot for doing stuff like that. It's super bad. It means you're going to have to embed your password in your HTML, right? Which is super nasty.
Yeah. So it's very important to understand that there's a reason why there's a lot of great backend tools that you can see, especially a lot of the ones we mentioned here. It's because there are some part of your application that should run on a server for security reasons, as well as a ton of other reasons, right? So SQL is not something we support. We might roll out some simple functionality around that at a later point, but at the moment, I recommend just using. I mean, if you're looking for a SQL database, Xano and Supabase both have Postgre database that are really good. That lets you do everything we've done here, right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Right. So maybe we should move on to the second step of. Of actually moving this into a native app. So this is people ask us quite often, so what can you do in Toddle? And it tends to be a long conversation because you can do quite a lot, but it's much easier to talk about the things we can't do. So you can't install a Toddle app in the App Store or on the Google Play Store, and you can't do some of the things that can only be done with native apps. So that's a very clear limitation. Toddle is just for building web apps. However, you can combine it with Bravo Studio, which is what Toby will show.
Okay, shall I go through that now?
Yes.
So let me just, for the people who don't know what Bravo is, do you want to switch my screen over, Andreas, and I can talk through it? So I think, to be fair, I think Andreas has done all the hard work, and our piece is going to be much simpler. As I say, for people who don't know, Bravo is a tool to help build native mobile applications. We're a little bit different than a lot of things out there because we focus on working with Figma very, very closely. So the way Bravo works, I'll just talk through it briefly first, and I'll show you. It's really, you design everything in Figma. We have this idea, I'll just highlight in this, that we have this idea of you add a few tags to the layer names to help Bravo understand what you're trying to do. But effectively, that's then imported by Bravo, and then it's a native mobile app at that point. You can do more things and working in a similar way to what Toddle does, connecting to APIs, and you can actually make the design adapt based on what comes in for APIs, that things can be replaced. But I think what's really interesting for me is that the combination is really cool. One of the problems we have with Bravo that we had a few people complaining about is unless we've built the particular sort of UI component in Bravo, they can get a bit stuck. But with the combination of the Toddle and Bravo together, you can get around almost any issue. I think it's a really interesting way of kind of getting the best of both worlds, particularly if you want to unlock that native experience, getting the notifications, getting in-app purchases into your application. But if you want to have the sort of the logic and the great sort of functionality that Toddle provide, you can really do all sorts of very specific UI things with that, as then pull in Bravo to do some of the extra stuff on the edges. So I think the combination is pretty powerful. And particularly, mobile apps are really painful to make. Even if you made, you still have to go to the App Store. You've got all this stuff, and we try and help with that as much as possible. But trying to getting the process to be made as easy as possible, I think is really what we're trying to do. Okay, so let me just go through how we can use these things together. So on this screen here, this is Figma. So the people who don't know, Figma is used by now pretty much like 90% of the design world. Generally, if you talk to any kind of designer, they'll be using Figma. It's just taken over everywhere. And generally what would happen is people will lay out an application. So here I've got an application of 2 screens. I've got this main screen here, another screen. And what's nice in Figma is you kind of draw out all the screens. You can actually, you kind of choose how big the screen is, the sort of size you want it to be. Like from here, it would draw a box, and then you can kind of lay it out. The designer would lay it out how it wants the app to look. And that's often what's used in the early stages of prototyping, where people kind of think about the user experience. So you could do all sorts of, and as a design tool, it's incredible. I mean, it scales incredibly well. I think it's the biggest WebGL application that's been produced, because it's all written in C++ and executed on the browser. It's pretty insane, the actual backend behind it, but what they've spent a lot of time doing is making a really good user experience. So it's really great to use and design with. So look, I'll just go through briefly what we've done here. So we've got the main sort of screen is here. What I've actually built is like a TikTok style effect. So I've got a series of screens you scroll through using which we call page swipe vertical. So you can swipe through. So that tag enables this. And then if you can see this, I've got a series of containers. Each of these containers is effectively a screen. And the way I've built this is they're just on top of each other. So if I just kind of hide them in turn, you can see there's 3 of them. This is the first one, which is just an empty page. But what's interesting about it, again, this is one of the limitations of Figma and really where Bravo comes into its own. I've actually got a rectangle here. I've just drawn a simple rectangle, and I put a tag on saying a Lottie file. This is using a Lottie file. A Lottie files, for those who don't know, is like an animation that's often used in web and mobile applications to make things a bit more interesting. So I've dropped a Lottie file in, so it'll draw a Lottie file here. There's actually a start button. So that's one screen. And then the next screen down, I've got a web view. So just to show you that you can do some really powerful things very, very easily, I've got the next screen, which will scroll through, is a web view to the Bravo website. So if you see that, I've got a component web view to Bravo Studio. So that will come up next. And then the last one is just an image, nice and easy. And then what we've actually set up is, if I switch this screen on here, so this one here, sorry, this Lottie file, I've also, if I switch to prototyping, what you can see here is that I've actually enabled, sorry, I'll come back. I've actually set the prototyping on. And again, this is really where the Figma is super helpful. You can actually do all the navigation in Figma, so you can draw out how things connect together. And I've basically set it up so that when you click on this hitbox or the button, it will go through to this next screen. So you can tell Bravo in Figma how to basically lay out your whole application, so you can see it really visually. And then this next screen is basically the application Andreas built. So if I go down to it, because it's this page here, you can see I've just got a very simple rectangle, and in that we've got another component web view of the site that or the web application Andreas has built, and you can see it's going to be completely sort of seamless with that. So that is all done in Figma. I've done nothing anywhere else in here so far. This is just me laying out a few boxes and just basically grabbing an image and getting a Lottie file and a web address. That's all this is. And what I'll do, so if you can see this application, I'll actually just show you the application first, and I'll talk a bit about Bravo, is on the right hand side here. So this is my mobile phone. You can see I'm scrolling here. So you can see this is the page, the first page, page 1 with page 1 text. And if I scroll down, then I go to the Bravo website, and that's a full website. Or let me scroll down all the way through it. And then we go down to the last page, which I inconveniently spelled incorrectly. It's actually page 3 rather than page 4. But you can see the Lottie animation. So when I mentioned the Lottie animation, the start button, that's there. So when I click on it, it takes me through to Andreas's application. So in like 5 or 10, 12 lines of Figma design, we have a very nice, fully native application with a bit of web help from Toddle. But that, and then this, what you can see, and I think this is the powerful thing for the people that know Bravo. This is super cool. You know, we've now got the ability to do swipes with logic, but thanks to Toddle, built into a Bravo application. And it's pretty seamless. I mean, I don't know if you can see how well it refreshes on my mobile on the screen, but it feels almost native. And if I go down to the end, there it is, the same thing that Andreas was showing off. So it's pretty cool combining these two together. You can build things incredibly fast with a lot of logic. What I'm just going to jump back to now is, I guess I want to show a bit of Bravo off because I think there's some important things to show. So in this process, let me just change some things. So let me just fix this page numbering. So on this one here, I think the last page, I think we called it page 4 when it's actually page 3. So let's change that on here. So I changed the page here, and this is another great feature of Bravo. So I've changed it in Figma, and then I say, okay, now I want to see that in my application. So I'm now switched across to Bravo. And the great thing is, once I've imported from Figma, they're connected. And I can just hit this button. And what that will do is it will sync the changes from Figma, and it will push it through to the mobile application. So you should see, it's not, that's a bit annoying. It's normally updates. I have to update it manually. So it updates the app to pick up the change. And so if I scroll down now, it's changed the page number. So you can actually make live changes to to native applications really fast. You don't have to do rebuilds all the time. I mean, it means you can do things, iterate really quickly. So in the same way, actually, the HTML would work. So checking changes to the Toddle app would be picked up as well pretty quickly on a refresh, just because it's effectively a web view. The way that Bravo works in itself, you can see that the 3 images, the 3 screens have come through, and like a lot of tools, we've got the 3 screens here. We've got the sort of layer breakdown left-hand side, and in a similar way to Toddle, I won't talk about it in too much detail now. You can actually connect backends to Bravo to be able to do things like, so elements can be repeated and natively through the design. So you've got a choice of which way you want to do things. And it has a lot of flexibility, and it works in, as I said, in a pretty similar way. The other thing that I think that where the partnership works really well is Bravo unlocks a lot of the sort of really nasty mobile stuff. Like you can do mobile native integration for authentication with Firebase, with OAuth 2 and custom login. And you can do notifications with deep linking into the application. You can do AdMob, payments with Stripe, and also in-app purchases. We've also got chat and analytics and integration and multilingual. So what we try to do with Bravo is make it so that we do a lot of the nasty mobile stuff, allowing you to kind of get your Figma design in and potentially a Toddle application, so you can get all that flexibility without having to worry about the hard mobile bits. And then finally, as I just mentioned, the publishing side, as soon as you're in Bravo, you can export it as a bundle, which can be put into an app store or test flight to be tested. So you're playing with a native application, and that's again different than most of the tools. Tools like Flutterfly obviously work in Flutter, and some of the tools use React Native. We actually have written Bravo specifically for Android and iOS. iOS. So, we get all the ability to do fully native stuff, potentially smaller applications as well. So it's pretty quick to do stuff when you combine the powers of the tools. It's pretty awesome, I would say. Is there any questions that I can answer from the sort of Bravo side of things?
Yes, we've got 2 really good questions that I'll pass on. The first is, does Figma design get converted into native elements, buttons, etc., for native app through Bravo Studio, or is everything running in a web view?
So that's a great question, and I think Carla's actually answered part of that for me. So thank you, Carla. So what actually happens is the design is converted into a native element. We don't use native UI, but we sort of create native elements in the actual application. It's not running in a web view. So the bulk of the Bravo side of things are not running in web views. Obviously, but the beauty is you can add web views in to do stuff with this sort of HTML flexibility. So you kind of get the benefit or the potential of using either in what you're trying to do.
Perfect. We've got, well, I actually have a question first. So is it possible for people to try out this app that we built? How would they go about that?
Yes. So I mean, I think where are we? We have here, let me just see. We have the ability to share it. So I've shared with you guys already. There is a link we can do here. What's the best way we put this link in? What this link should do is it should enable you to, you need to download the Bravo Vision application. So the Bravo Vision is kind of like our previewer that's in the App Store. So you have to go to the App Store on iOS or Android, download Bravo Vision. And then when you do that, click the link. I think Vakis is going to share it, which I would try and just give to him now. And if you click on the link from your mobile phone, once you've got Bravo Vision installed, it should then give you access to the application so people can play around with it. I mean, it's not a super complex one. And actually, as you see from Figma, it's very basic, but that's the power of this stuff, right? You can, with very simple things, you can get a lot of functionality out. Although, to be fair, Andreas, you did all the hard stuff. I mean, we're not doing anything very clever from our end, other than the stuff we've already built previously. So yeah. So in terms of the link, I've just shared it with Vakis. So I think Vakis is going to be sharing it out.
Yeah, I think we'll also add it to the afterwards. We'll add it to the description in the stream as well, so you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I should reiterate is, you know, I think we've been, one of the challenges, as I mentioned, was that the you know, is doing these sort of more customized visual components, which Toddle is a perfect fit for. So I'm really excited to see if we can build more stuff together. And actually, I think if we can get this, you know, I think there's lots more sort of deeper integration we could potentially do. At the moment, the web views are very much sort of one way. You drop stuff in and it's usable, but it's not, I think, and this is something I think Andreas particularly wants, right, is to actually have a bit more sort of feedback, so we can actually push messages into the web view and out again. And so we can actually get even more functionality from this. I think there's a lot more we can do with this. So the more people demand it, the more we'll build, I guess, is probably the way of looking at it.
Yep. I think that's a good measurement, a good way of doing it. Yeah, I think we get asked fairly often if it's possible to sort of run Toddle as a native app, right? And we don't have any plans of going down that route. We think building web apps is more than complex enough. We don't need to there's so much we can do just to improve Toddle as it is without trying out whole new worlds. So the fact that we can collaborate with you and actually people can build an application once and have it deployed to multiple platforms, which is sort of the old dream, but has been notoriously difficult to do so far, right? I think that's really interesting. And having our platforms sort of integrate closer, I think there's a lot of potential in what's possible there.
Absolutely. Very cool. So I think, was it all the questions that we covered off?
We had one more question, which is around push notifications. Is it easy to set up push notifications with
so I would say this is one of those, I mean, generally, yes. I mean, you can, Bravo has been built for push notifications. The difficult part is the push notification part. I mean, Bravo receives it. Obviously, the challenge is you've got the complexities of working with Apple and Google and making sure it all kind of fits in with them. But we try and make it easier by working with one signal. So we've got it all built into the application. You get a native push notification that come in once the app is installed, and you know, the beauty then is you can do deep link push notifications, so you can actually go directly into the application on certain screens. And I think, you know, there's a lot we can do even with that without having to build any extra deeper integration. I mean, it's possible for us to do a push notification and then pass through data from a push notification into a web view then be used by a toddle application. So there's a whole ton of stuff we can do out of the box right now. I think the challenge for us, Andreas, is to build some examples so people can figure out, like, to see what's really possible. I think there's all sorts of cool stuff we can build.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Right, me too. Cool. I think we've.
So yeah, I think I want to say, like, go try out, go download Bravo Vision and try out the application. I'm also just going to post the link to the. So here you can go and try the web version only, as well. Go and choose your stack, the tools you like the most, and then make sure to go and tweet about it as well. I think that's unless there's any sort of final questions that people who are sitting and holding in. I think that's I think we're good. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Andreas. Really appreciate this. It's been good fun.
It has been good fun, and thank you very much for joining us. We're really, really happy to have you here. I'm really looking forward to see what the future holds for Bravo and Toddle.
Awesome. Me too. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.